Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we have with us a special guest. Now, according to Aaron Wiggins and according to his shirt, an NBA champion himself. We are joined by the one and only Cone. How are you today, my friend?
I'm fantastic. I mean, like I was telling you before the podcast, I got sunburned to all hell at the parade because despite my favorite thing in the sun being to get sunburnt, I just wore no sunscreen. It was like 95 degrees in Oklahoma City, packed body to body, and I got fried. I'm exhausted. I got in at like midnight last night from the airport, but I'm on top of the world. My voice is still kind of gone. You can kind of hear it from Game 7, which was the single most stressful day of my entire life. I never wish to be part of a Game 7 of the NBA Finals ever again as a fan, but I'm feeling fantastic. You know, like Aaron Wiggins said, we're champions, and it feels good. I'm jealous of everyone else who's gotten to be a champion before because like this, the least stress I've ever been as a sports fan. The draft's today, and I'm like just finding it so hard to lock in because I just feel good. I'm used to just any type of heartbreak that the Thunder can give me, they're willing to give me at some point or another, and it just ended differently this time, which it's a very nice change of pace. You know, I prefer this as opposed to Dame shot or Game 6 Clay or Lou Dort getting blocked in the bubble or last year PJ Washington. Which, by the way, if your favorite team ever has to play someone whose name is a letter and then a J, don't do it. Like just like triple team them, whether it's PJ or it's TJ. Like don't let them cook because maybe the two scariest players I've ever seen the Thunder play. And I know we'll talk about TJ McConnell, but my number one priority in the offseason is for the Thunder to sign him so I never have to see him play Oklahoma City again. So
it's a high IQ play.
Damn.
What was the biggest highlight for you of being there for all this? Because you were there for Game 7, you were there for the parade. What was the best moment?
I'll tell you the worst moment was when I was like, they could close out Indiana, so I went to Indiana for Game 6, and that was not my favorite thing. That Ben Shepherd 3 in the stands was... to have the Pacers fan, there were multiple Pacers fans who were like patting me on the back, like, "It's okay, buddy, you got it next year." After Ben Shepherd hit that 3, but yeah, outside of that, I mean, everything was awesome. I was, at Game 7. Best part was obviously, winning it all, and people have seen multiple videos now of me sobbing my eyes out in the stands after they went ahead and got the job done. That Ludo, I know they're calling me a soft weenie. That's on my scouting report. Yeah, I was supposed to go first round the draft today, and then they saw the woke nonsense, soft weenie stuff that I bring to the table, and there's huge concerns, man. I think I might fall to pick 98, which some people are saying doesn't even exist. So my agent's not doing the best job at the moment. But outside of that, the Lou Dort half court 3, which was actually the most insane shot I've seen in my entire life. Like I will never see anything close to that again. And then just. Yeah, I mean, the parade, it really doesn't settle in, I've learned, until the parade. Like, seeing the guys celebrating, I was like, oh, yeah, they actually did it. The 2 days prior, I was like, I'm going to wake up at some point and have the most stressful day of my life again for Game 7, which, the single longest day ever. Thank God Kevin Durant got traded, because I was just sitting there, like, my whole calendar just said wallow in stress for, like, the entire day up until that happened. So I'm glad we got to reschedule a little bit of that till later.
Yeah, I think the parade point is a good one because that's what I was thinking when there was like this little narrative going around about, oh, why aren't the Thunder celebrating it being like the most muted title celebration ever? And like, I'm not saying that wasn't a little strange, but also I do think that there's like an element of it really doesn't set in right away. Like it's a surreal thing, and it can kind of take a moment to really have a full understanding of like, wow, we actually just did that. And then Aaron Wiggins goes out there and delivers a hell of a speech because he's the man who saved basketball. Logan, what are you doing over there? Just thinking about eating beans or nothing out of you?
I was for a minute. Cone, you're undefeated at OKC home games, though. Yeah, man. What's your record at right now?
So they've won the last 10 in a row that I've been to in Oklahoma City. They haven't lost with me in OKC since 2023. So
fake stat, because what were they at home this year? Like 46 and 8?
I'm trying to pump up Cone's draft odds
extremely
right
fair,
now.
Extremely fair. The better part was when, before I went to Indiana and saw us lose Game 6, they had won like 14 straight, I think, with me in attendance, or that was going to be like win 14 in a row going back to 2023, which, you know what, Logan? It is fair because they were really good last year, really getting good again this year. So it is a fake stat. You know what? I'm a fraud. At this point, the draft stock has fallen enough. I'm going to start crashing out. There are going to be like videos on the timeline of dropping my draft stock of me again, bawling my eyes out. This time it's because I'm never going to make my dream of the NBA draft as a 25-year-old who can't dunk or can hang on rim like maybe the slightest little bit at the very most. It's just I wish you had chosen to eat beans like you talked about before the podcast and didn't come on the podcast.
Well, our entire objective today was to expose you. We already have a thumbnail ready. It's you naked outside, jaw dropped, cone exposed. As a fraud, as a fake Thunder fan, perhaps, and certainly not as an NBA caliber talent.
Yeah,
So I just want you to know what you're walking into.
When you say naked photo, is this one that you captured of me at some point, or is this like is this like an AI?
We don't need to get into the details.
Okay, cool.
Let's not get into the particulars. Let's just see the film when it comes out, and any notes you have, you can pass on that. But I think you're really going to like the image. Okay.
Oh, amazing.
Let's talk a bit more about the Thunder themselves, because Logan and I have had all sorts of debates about where does this Shai season rank all time among the best guard seasons, where does this defense rank all time, where does this team rank all time. There's one conversation I think is particularly interesting to have with you as a Thunder fan, which is, did Shai just have the best individual season in Thunder history?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. Like I've seen, I mean, the mayor said at the parade, he's like the best player to ever wear the Thunder jersey, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And obviously, you can talk about like legacy type stuff. We can, screw this. Let's have a GOAT debate real quick. My GOAT is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Y'all can drop yours in the chat as well. But I mean, it was like to win MVP. Obviously, like there have been a few people who have done that in Thunder history. KD, Russ, but Russ is really the guy. Like in terms of greatest player, like the single best player ever to put on a Thunder jersey is Kevin Durant, but like greatest season, his MVP season, but it didn't line up, with like when we went to the finals, and then Russ had his MVP, but we lost round one. It was never all put together in one spot. And now Shai MVP, Western Conference Finals MVP, which is a huge boost to legacy. Thank God they added that trophy, because I need Shai to rack those up too, to now have some accolades over other people. But yeah, that, and then Finals MVP to get the job done and win a championship in OKC. Like, I don't even think it's a close conversation, and I think Shai's pretty clearly at this point. I love Russ to death, but I think it's pretty clear Shai's now like the greatest player in Thunder history.
I wouldn't say it's like one. I wouldn't even like consider Russ if I'm keeping it a stack. Russ would be like a concrete 3 for me. I mean, I think the one is 2014 KD if we're going to like point to another season that's actually close to SGA. But I do agree. And I mean, the difference is, their run ends in the Western Conference Finals. And KD's amazing that year. He leads the league in scoring, wins the MVP, leads the playoffs in scoring too. And I think Russ had a bad run, but ultimately both of them do come up short in the Western Conference Finals against a better Spurs team. So I do think this is the best season by a player in Thunder history. And it's really what you said. I mean, they got the job done. It's like, what else can you ask from the guy? MVP, checks all the boxes. They win the finals. I would have liked the Thunder have done it in a more convincing fashion, but that's kind of crazy. Like, you think he's already enough. Like, he's number one, like, in totality, not just regular season, like one individual year. You think number one all time. You're okay with saying that already?
Over LeBron, over Jordan, over Kareem.
Exactly. Thank God. I'm glad you brought up the other names. Over and Logan. I mean, I agree with you. There's like Russ there at 3. Probably Patrick Patterson or Raymond Felton would probably go.
We don't have to mention Russ. We don't have to mention Russ. It's okay.
In Thunder history. Yeah. I mean, it's for me. It's always top 5 Thunder players of all time. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, number 1. Number
Mitch
2,
McGarry. Mitch
McGarry's up there too. Maybe number 3 is probably Norris Cole when he played.
Royal Ivy.
Royal Ivy's a good
Mo
one.
Sine shout out. I mean, you guys have
Eric
a lot
Maynor?
of great
No
players.
Eric Maynor? Come on, guys.
Those are
well,
good.
Well, is he better than Daquan Cook? Was Eric Maynor ever better than Daquan Cook?
Have we brought up Perry Jones? We haven't quite yet. We definitely need to bring him up. Joffrey Laverne, that's another huge name we need to make sure to include in this conversation.
Ryan
Gomes. I hadn't even thought about him. I might have to slot him like 6, I think. Probably 1 spot above Joff.
Where does Alex Abrinas figure in all of this?
I mean, I can't even get into that. I'm gonna get emotional again. My draft stock's gonna fall even further if I start talking about Teen Wolf. Is Joffrey Laverne the best Joffrey in NBA history? Are there any others?
He is definitely the only Joffrey with that spelling. Yeah, I mean, if we start counting like Jeffs who are spelled Geoff, then you get the great Jeff Petrie. But in terms of the French spelling,
the namesake of the dish. the petri dish, correct?
That's exactly right. Well, one of our
Okay.
great scientists of all time. But yeah, he's the only Joffrey ever with the Joffrey spelling. Great question, Colin.
And the legacy gets you. I'm glad we have the whole NerdSesh stats team behind the screen working on this type of stuff. I appreciate them.
Oh, yeah, we've got all sorts of little elves working around the clock.
Oh, they're elves. I didn't even realize they were elves. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
they're little elves. They're little elves.
Okay. Amazing. I gotta get some elves working on my videos. It's just it doesn't work well enough for me as myself. I've been looking to hire some elves. So yeah, shoot me some resumes, things like that.
Yeah, labor
but
costs
yeah.
are unbelievable.
But I would also like to, just throw out there one last name shout out to all the Thunder legends that got us here, including Samaj Krishan, who of course hit the huge three to give Russell Westbrook his final triple double, which I'm glad he's etched in history forever on that front. But yeah, I mean, when I talk about greatest, like I'm always someone. It's the best player to ever wear a Thunder jersey. Overall in totality, it is still Kevin Durant. If we're talking about just we're getting it again, legacy talks, but in terms of what they've done as a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder, I know like Russ and KD did a lot. They were here for longer. Like they've got some records, and it's only a matter of time before Shai breaks a lot of those records and is like the guy in all the history books for the Thunder. But just the fact that he like got the job done at this point, I think I'm not a ring culture like you get the ring and it all matters kind of guy. But I think to do it for the Thunder and to be the one to get them over the top and finish with genuinely one of the greatest guard seasons ever, I think does put him in that tier for me.
Yeah, what I always say when we're talking about ranking individual seasons is that there's a subtle difference between that and your pure peak. Like the pure level you were at as a basketball player is slightly different from the season if you accomplish something of great historical magnitude in that season, like bringing the first title to your franchise history, like winning a title in general. And even though that is up to factors that align, that don't have to do with you individually, like I just think clearly the 2025 Thunder around Shai are a much better basketball team than the 2014 Thunder were around KD. I still think when you consider that he got the job done, and not just that, like, even though it wasn't as flawless a playoff run as maybe I would have expected from Shai, just because my expectations for him are so astronomically high, like, every time he struggled, he made the adjustments, he bounced back, and in the biggest moments, he came through and played at a really high level. He got better as series go along, and that's the expectation for a great player, especially in your first really deep playoff run like this. He ends up becoming the third player ever in a title run to average 29 points and 6 assists per game on 57% true shooting. It's just him with Michael Jordan and Jokic. And then you consider that it was truly an all-time great regular season with north of 32 points per game on incredible efficiency, 64% true shooting, the impact metrics, insane. Guy was like setting records for on-court net rating that we've only ever seen from peak Steph Curry and Draymond Green on those ridiculously great Warriors teams. Just unbelievable raw plus minus. So all of that considered, I do think that this is the greatest individual season in Thunder history. That being said, like you were alluding to, Cone, and you, Logan, like just in terms of the pure level the player is at, when you are talking purely about peak, I would still take 2014 KD. It's relatively close, honestly. Shai is that great, but it is still clear to me. KD's production that year is so stupid, bro. 32, 7.5, 5.5 on almost plus 10% relative true shooting. And then in the playoffs, 39 and 4 on plus 4% relative true shooting. I just think that's a top 2 scorer we've ever seen. And I do think that his incredible, like, stylistic versatility and malleability, the crazy on and off ball value, just makes him such an incredibly portable player. And so when we're ranking guys in a vacuum, like I do think that that's always going to be a huge strength of KD as an all-time great. And the athleticism at that age, the rim pressure, the ability to get to the line, the ability to be a plus defender when he wanted to, at least in stretches. KD is just amazing. But Shai accomplished the thing, which is winning the title. And I think that that does give this season the slight edge in that respect. We talked about Shai. Now let's go to his co-star in this run. Jalen Williams, obviously, shut a lot of people up. People saying J-Dub is a guy who's going to have to be gone for the Thunder to reach their greatest heights. All sorts of crazy stuff has been said about J-Dub, and he ends up now not just an NBA champion, Guy with a 40-piece in the finals. I believe the 5th youngest player ever to do that. Let's take this big picture, though. Cone, how high do you think he ranks right now in the NBA as a player?
I've been trying to think about that, whether it's 2 or 3 behind Shai.
Okay.
It honestly just depends where I end up putting Aaron Wiggins in this whole conversation. But
good point.
I'll be a little bit more conservative for the moment. I'll get that take off as the summer goes on.
Yeah.
I would say, because I think the thing that isn't brought up enough by people, and I know y'all know this, but the defense for him. Obviously, he was all defense, but I thought there should have been more buzz for him being a defensive player of the year type of like candidate with this team. The versatility, the fact that he played center for us for a little bit and did a pretty good job, all things considered, when we had no bigs. He's able to guard pretty much every position. Obviously, it depends which position he's guarding on his effectiveness, but overall, he's able to keep up with most players. The length that he has, he's one of the most versatile defenders in the entire sport, and I don't think that got enough love throughout the season. And then, there are offensive ups and downs. This was his first very deep run, like it was for Shai as the 1 option, as the 2 option, and looking forward now, I am so excited to see what he does. I feel like he unlocked a lot of things throughout this run, realized that, hey, I'm just way bigger and stronger than a lot of people, and got downhill, put that pressure on defenders, especially in that 40-piece. It just felt like he's like, oh, I can just bully literally everybody out of the way and make anything happen at the rim. I think as he continues to lean into that more, the free throw rate also went up in the playoffs. That's obviously a big thing. I mean, he's going to learn from Shai, who scored literally every point this season from the free throw line, so that should be a good mentor for him there. And just to see his growth on that offensive end, defensively, what he did this season, I would say probably top 20-ish, like maybe 25. I haven't done a full player ranking since the season ended, of course, but I would say somewhere between like 25 to 20. Maybe it could go a little bit higher if I really thought about it. It's just really tough with how deep the league is nowadays, and there's also so many wild cards you think about, like where do you possibly rank like Joel Embiid, with his health, what does that look like? And Kawhi Leonard, he was really good this season when he was healthy, but obviously that continues to be a question mark. So yeah, I would say probably in that top 20-ish range, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'd say like 25 to 30. I think you made a great point at the top, though, Cone, just about how defense is really underappreciated in the league. Like, me and Carson talk about this all the time, but it's like the most overlooked side of the ball. Everybody wants to look at points, boards, and assists and how efficient you were, but like that's really half the game. And J-Dub's one of the best defenders in basketball. I thought, I won't say like most impactful. I think Chet's probably the most important defender to this OKC defense in totality just because of his rim protection. But J-Dub's up there just because of his versatility. And it was really interesting, Cone. You're talking about people not really recognizing it. I don't know if players fully realized how effective J-Dub was as a defender. Carson and I talked about this throughout the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, like guys really going at J-Dub on the block and attacking him going to the rim and thinking he's going to be, it's going to be sweet or he's going to be food or something, and it's not. J-Dub's a beast. Like, you're not going to ISO the guy and just serve him buckets effortlessly, but I do think we saw a level of composure that we didn't get from J-Dub in last year's playoffs, and obviously it wasn't a flawless run. The Nuggets series is going to stick out to me as like the one where he was really down, just missing point-blank layups, just was off completely in that series. But the rest of the run was really effective, and I didn't have him. I don't think I had J-Dub in my top 30 when we did our player rankings last time. I would have him higher. I definitely have him over guys like Triple J, Jaylen Brown, Ja Morant. Like, he's definitely jumped. And, just looking at his own team, you guys would have him above Chet too, right?
Yeah.
I think in totality, just with his level as a scorer in these playoffs consistently, I'd have him above him. So he's jumped, and I think that's about the right range. But it is that two-way ability, and I don't know, man. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Carson and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure you're excited about it too, Cone. Who the hell knows how high J-Dub could climb next season, man, if we see him continue to grow as an offensive player and get more consistent. Like, the guy could be concrete. Well, I expect him to be top 20 next season. He could creep into, top 15 potentially. The growth could be exponential from both of these young Thunder co-stars, and those are my expectations. I think that's definitely attainable next year.
Real quick, coming into the season, he added a lot of he put on a lot of muscle and weight, and I think that affected the shot a little bit at times. But I think leading into that more this next season, like we saw with the free throw rate, the physicality, I agree. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow next season. And I think the same with Chet. I'm sure we're going to talk about Chet, my beautiful Abraham Lincoln in a few here, but had to get the pre-glaze out.
Yeah, I know. That's good preemptive glazing there. J-Dub is in such a valuable archetype in today's NBA, and one that probably becomes even more valuable in the playoffs, like being that true do-it-all wing who impacts the game in so many different ways, who on ball can be an effective scorer for you out of pick and roll at all three levels, who can be an effective playmaker for you, who off ball can be effective as a catch and shooter and as a cutter, who is one of the best transition scorers in basketball, and then defensively has some of the best matchup versatility in the entire NBA. Like, this is a guy who we saw deal with Triple J as his matchup in stretches and really give him some trouble trying to attack him out of the post. We saw him take on the Jokic matchup in stretches. Obviously, it's Caruso who gets the most credit for just doing an incredible job as a smaller player, guarding Jokic, fronting him, keeping him from getting the ball entirely. Just phenomenal work. But J-Dub had some really impressive possessions in that same role. And then at the same time, like, absolutely, he is very effective dealing with guards on the perimeter. He is a very impactful backline defender. He's a pretty good rebounding wing. Like, the guy just does so much out there to drive winning. And I think the value of that really comes through over an entire playoff run, when even when he's off as a scorer, he's still making that sort of real winning impact with what he's doing defensively, what he's doing in transition. And then when he is really going as a scorer, like we saw at times in the Indiana series, the Memphis series, the Minnesota series, it's like, wow, that is just a fantastic basketball player. Overall in the playoffs, gives you 21.5, 5.5, and 5 on 54.5% true shooting with elite defense. That efficiency obviously isn't great, but a lot of that is just born out of him having a down 3-point shooting postseason, and with the burden that he carries as the second creator in this OKC offense, and with the level of impact that you're getting from him all around, like, I don't really mind that efficiency in the playoffs. It's harder, way harder to be super efficient in the playoffs. So I think he sneaks inside my top 20. I'm a sicko for rankings, so I'm going to put this in more concrete terms. I do think that the range is 20 to 25, but I think that he's probably closer to being in that 20 spot. So let me read out to you guys my top 18 players who I think are pretty clear cut. Now, this isn't going to be ranked exactly, but Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Luka, Tatum, AD, KD, LeBron, Steph, Wemby, Ant, Zion, Brunson, Hallie, Mitchell, Mobley, Kawhi, Booker. Does anybody disagree with any of those names above J-Dub? I can see a little pushback on Evan Mobley, but...
Yeah, I was going to say Mobley's the only one that maybe could push back, but I'm a big Mob head, so it's hard for me to push back against my guy. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's probably about fair. There were the offensive ups and downs, so I could see that people pushing back a little bit, easing up on some of the hype because of that. But I do agree. Like, I think sometimes I'm just saying, like, ball don't stop here. I'm a big efficiency is overrated. You got to tween Hezzy in the playoffs, but I feel like people sometimes get a little bit too, like, I'm glad Shai emptied the clip in that game 7. Like, it's so funny though, in the moment, it was like he's been so efficient, and then fourth quarter he was going for a lot of those tougher buckets and was missing shots. It very quickly stacked up to the efficiency not looking great. And there's a part of me that's the stat nerd. I'm like, no, Shai, the true shooting, stop. And then there's the ball don't stop me. That's, I'm like, yeah, Shai, get him, tweet Hezzy, like, do it to him kind of offense. So it's efficiency. I'm a sucker for it as well, but I'm just glad that Shai and Dub emptied the clip when they needed to and just put up a bunch of shots, because one of the limitations for this team that if something was going to sink us in the playoffs, it was going to be part of this is we don't have a lot of those like great creators on the roster. And that's, maybe some of the hope with Topic next year, or if we trade for somebody in the offseason. I mean, AJ Mitchell brought like a little bit of that, but obviously wasn't going to do that in the NBA Finals as a rookie. That's insane to ask him. We had Casey Wallace do a little bit more of those on-ball reps this season too. And I do think there's room for Chet, obviously, to grow as a ball handler, as a creator himself. There's still a lot of limitations there. Still very raw in that regard, but I think the way that sometimes Dub's like, I just got to put my head down and literally make something happen when Shai's out on the court. I think his ability to, not only maintain, but the minutes with Shai off the court in the playoffs were just good. which
Yeah.
was a huge concern for people coming into the playoffs as well. They're like, can Dub be that second option? Can the Thunder maintain at least when Shai's off the court? And I mean, we were pretty solid. I think it was like a +5 or so when it was the Dub no Shai lineups in the playoffs.
Yeah, overall in the non-Shea minutes, +8 net rating. I mean, that's like as good as you possibly could have asked for. And also, OKC was really good down the stretch of the regular season in those non-Shea minutes. But early in the year, absolutely, that was a huge question mark. I think that J-Dub's improvement as the year went along, being able to float those offensive units, is a huge, huge part of why they were able to win those minutes like they did. Let me throw out to you guys some of the next names that would come up after that, and you tell me what you think about J-Dub versus these guys. So Triple J, Logan, you said you take J-Dub. I agree with that. I think that Triple J has like such an impressive ability as a mismatch attacker that we saw in the regular season, and the touch shot making can be so great with him. The foul drawing and the defensive impact is great. But then you get into a playoff environment and you do see that like the Thunder are an incredibly difficult challenge, but if you put him up against a defense where he can't attack mismatches because everybody's going to be physical as hell and fight like hell for position and swipe down on the ball and strip him, like he just doesn't have other avenues to reliable offense. And then his lack of playmaking can get badly exposed by double teams. The rebounding for a big is still a problem. Like, I just think that J-Dub's a more versatile offensive contributor and you trust him more there. And the defensive impact is still great.
Gangly, goofy, can't rebound. Dub.
Soft-handed weenie.
Okay, lots of hating on
He
Triple
goes to
J.
Weenie. He goes to Weenie Hut Juniors, bro.
Okay,
You might be a
chill
weenie
on
at
him.
general sometimes. I can't lie.
Hey, guys, go easy on him, all right? He's just trying his best like any of the rest of us. Okay, how about Kyrie?
You shouldn't have talked about naked picture me as the thumbnail, Carson, and maybe I'd go easier. You put me in this mood.
It's going to go viral. And all I want to do every single day, I wake up and I just want to go viral. I'll do anything to make it
I
happen.
thought you were going to say every day you wake up you thought about making a naked thumbnail of me. I'm kind of hurt that you didn't.
That's what I do.
Cone.
Thanks.
Two things
Logan,
can be true at once, my
Logan,
friend.
this is why. Wait, real quick, Logan. Are you the nerd and he's the sesh, or is it the other way around?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. I just had to make sure to check it. That adds up. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, how about Kyrie versus J-Dub? This is tough, obviously, because of the ACL recovery. Also, I'm not really considering Dame or Embiid here. Dame because he's going to miss next year, and I don't know if he'll ever be the same. Embiid because he never plays.
Speaking of
basketball.
which, did you say Halliburton in those 18 names that you ran off?
Yeah,
did you not include him too?
Well, I had Tatum. Are we writing off all those guys because they won't play next season?
I don't know what to do. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I
That's
think
a
we
fair
should
point.
I mean, I think we should include them, but I don't know. I mean, you're right. Like, those guys are going to miss significant time next year. So
I mean, they're going to miss next year. So maybe J-Dub by default then is a top 20 lock.
Go.
Well, I mean, that's where it gets interesting to me, though, when we're talking about some of these guys in different roles, like the number 1 versus number 2 dynamic is really what's interesting. I think I'd still take Dub, though, in complete value because I mean, it's not even close when we're talking about in terms of, like, defense between the two. And then offensively, it's like Kyrie's obviously a much better offensive player, but I still think there's a consistency area with Kyrie that I'm not getting. You know, he's not what he once was. I'm not getting that full value from Kyrie there. So I'm fine with taking Dub here too.
Yeah, I think I'd lean Dub. I mean, you know, coming to the unbiased source here, but I think the defensive impact that he brings, and I think there was a lot of growth as well in terms of his self creation. Obviously, he's not Kyrie Irving, but I think what he brings to the table, just in terms of that overall versatility on both ends, I think it's extremely valuable. And also the positional versatility with Dub. He really, you know, he's played the 4 for a lot of his career despite being pretty undersized in that regard. But he plays the 4, he plays the 3, you know, is the lead creator in a lot of lineups, plays off ball. I think just that versatility brings him a little bit higher. And I mean, you also real quick want to note, you listing off those names, it is crazy how many season-ending injuries happened this year. And I know people talk about the schedule, and of course there's the conversation around having to move more than ever with the 3-point line and the burst and all that stuff. Like, it was crazy, that moment where Halliburton, and I want to give him a shout real quick, the Pacers themselves were one of the scariest teams I've ever seen the Thunder play by far. I was we were up, like, they had no Halliburton, we were up 11 with 4 minutes to go, and I'm like shaking in my boots in the stands. I'm like, oh my God, TJ McConnell's going to do it to us. But a lot of that is Halliburton and what he did this season. Just genuinely one of my favorite players, one of my favorite runs to ever watch for a non-Thunder team. And it's just, like, I have no idea what happens in the East next season with him out and Tatum out and the Cavs, are they just going to keep it all together and do the Knicks? Like the Knicks still don't have a head coach. I don't know. It's just that's something I can't stop thinking about is what the hell happens in the Eastern Conference. I mean, it might be Desmond Bane's conference to run. I can't lie.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been saying that.
Yeah,
The injury stuff is devastating, man, and it has to get better. Simply put, I think that you can look at shortening the schedule as a rational solution to that, but I don't think it's one that the NBA will ever truly consider just because league revenue is the number one priority. You take games off the table, you take money off the table. But we have to figure out some way to improve this because guys, regular season and especially postseason are getting hurt and missing games at a historically unprecedented rate.
Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think it has to do anything with all of the basketball that guys have played prior to coming to the NBA, like the prominence of AAU ball? And like, I'm just saying, do you think any of this, does it have a component of them already having tread on their tires entering the league?
It's a good question. I think it probably has more to do with the demands of the game today, all the ground that guys are being asked to cover at a pretty fast pace. It's not the fastest pace that we've seen in NBA history, but to have that combination of that pace and the space that you have to cover, that would be my inclination. And then the wear and tear of doing that over an 82-game season and then a playoff run, more so than probably the tread on their tires from AAU, just because like I think we're seeing there are certain guys who are playing basketball for longer than ever before who maybe I guess you could say weren't really part of that AAU generation yet. Guys like LeBron and KD and Steph who are doing this into their late 30s and in LeBron's case 40. Best longevity we've ever seen from an era of superstars, but they are kind of from a little bit of a different generation. But
I could even see on the other side a little bit as an offensive player with defenders now being a lot quicker, like, just having to, and defensive schemes being smarter than ever, having to work around all of that and work harder to get buckets and make things happen. I mean, it felt like the highest level of basketball we've ever seen throughout these playoffs. Yeah. So when you're having to face all these new advanced schemes and stuff and, figure it out, like it just feels like there's so much more than ever that you need to do physically. I mean, obviously, when you talk about the three-point line and, guys like shooters like Lou Dort hitting from the logo at this point, you got to get out there and contest that. I still can't believe that shot went. That was the moment.
Was that the highest a ball has ever been shot?
I think so. Like we put a new Jumbotron and I was like 95% sure I was going to hit that thing when it went up. I thought I was up in the 300s, the nosebleeds, like the crybaby loser I am. And I thought it was going to hit. I like kind of held my hand out like it was a t-shirt cannon. I thought I was going to catch it. And then I might have tried to keep it, run away. I was like, ooh, a basketball. I don't know. I would have had to evaluate in the moment how.
You would have had to hit a sick hezzy tween in the stand. Show ball don't stop what you're really about.
Oh, the mellow thing from like the, court side, like going up for the shot. I would have done the same thing from the 300s and probably, unfortunately, hurt a family of some kind with the shot that I would have put up. So,
but I don't know if you guys heard, Cone's 54% shooting hang pulls, bruh.
That's OD. From Trey Ball? Not from Trey Ball.
From Trey Ball. That's what they've been saying. A lot of people have been saying that, actually. If you search Twitter, there's a lot of @3_Cone with that exact thing, man. It's
You know why, too? He's been eating his oxtails and his collard greens. How about that?
That'll do it.
Yeah, and I had some chicken tenders a couple days ago, too. Those were huge for me as well. That's actually part of why my draft stock is dropped, is because I think people are a little bit too afraid of my aura.
Yeah, that can definitely be a factor for sure. All right, on the Kyrie question, this is really, really close. This is very, very close. I mean, Kyrie is just still like such a dream offensive number 2 to me. Like, guys giving you last year 25, 5, and 5 on better than 59% true shooting. Just such an insane shooter, so effective off ball, and so efficient still on ball as an isolation scorer, pick and roll scorer. This is really, really hard. I don't know what Kyrie's going to look like, unfortunately, when he comes back. Like, he's 33 off an ACL tear. I think his game is so skill-based, and so much of it is being an elite shooter that I'm optimistic that he could maybe bounce back more effectively than a lot of guys. But I guess kind of a bummer. I'll give the tiebreaker to J-Dub on that front. Let me throw out some other names real quick before we move on. Trey and Cade, sort of guys who are in that offensive engine mold, but maybe have some flaws and questions. Logan, who would you take?
I definitely, and that was what I was talking about earlier with like the 1 versus 2 dynamic.
Right.
I wouldn't take Trey just because Trey is such a big liability defensively, even though he's a great offensive player. Cade is the guy that I wonder about. and I think I'd take Cade. There's just a different level of half-court creation, I think, with Cade that I'm getting as a legitimate ball handler and playmaker where there's a gap there. I still think Dub's the better defender, but Cade is a good enough defender where I think there's a big enough offensive gap. But that was the guy I thought about. Who would be next to Dub? The first two guys I thought about were Cade. And then, honestly, it wasn't Trey. For me, it was probably like Siakam, honestly, next. But Cade is the first guy I think I'd take that we've talked about above Dub.
Yeah, I think the Cade one's tough. I think I'd probably lean Cade a little bit just because of the way that he was that engine for that Pistons team. I mean, you saw in the playoffs, like, the drop-off of some of those guys. Malik Beasley forgot how to shoot threes, shooting 12% from tray ball, OD hang pulls from him. So, yeah, I think I would probably lean Cade a little bit as much as I want to keep the glaze going. I think I'd lean slightly that way with him. I mean, he was just so unbelievable this season, exceeded all expectations for the Pistons. And, I mean, that's another team. We talk about this weird Eastern Conference. Like, could the Pistons be a top 4-3 seed next season with how the East looks? I don't know. But he's just – it was so cool to see him go from, people blaming him in part for the Pistons winning 14 games and being one of the biggest disasters in recent basketball history to now all-NBA type of player.
I'm going to give an edge to J-Dub over both these guys. First of all, maybe I think that Trey and Cade are more neck and neck as basketball players than you guys do, because although I think that obviously Trey has the dynamic of being a major defensive liability and Cade is a solid defender, I also think that Trey is a significantly better offensive player than Cade. Right now, I think that he is still a level up from him as a playmaker. I think that he is a more dynamic interior passer. I think that he is more of a true advantage creator. I think that his scoring ceiling is certainly higher just with his ability to get to the line at an astronomical rate, his pull-up shooting ceiling. Cade, I do still think, has some real issues as your offensive number one, like really low efficiency. And part of that, sure, you can say is the situation and the overwhelming responsibility he's tasked with, but then also like one of the worst rim finishing star guards that we've ever seen, especially for a guy who's 6'6". Like, that really has to get better. And so he can live on such a tough shot diet. And then he had over 5 turnovers a game in the playoffs. And again, part of that is usage, but some of those are just like bad ball handling turnovers where he has to get better going forward. So I'm just going to take like the elite number 2 over either one of those guys who are flawed enough as number ones where I'm like, I don't think you're going super far with that guy as your engine, as your best player. With Cade, I think that he has more room for improvement, and I think that he definitely has the potential to be like a top 15 kind of guy, but he's not there yet. And so I'll just take the guy who scales so well in multiple situations, is so impactful on both sides of the ball, is more efficient than a Cade Cunningham. I'll take J-Dub there. All right, let me ask you guys just about a couple more players in one group, and then we can move on from the J-Dub fest. But I just think there's a lot of guys in this range, and they're all kind of interesting. Let's go with a group of wings and forwards. Jimmy, Siakam, Paolo. Because, Logan, you mentioned Siakam. These guys are all different, but would you take any of them over J-Dub? Let's just frame it like that.
I'm pondering.
Yeah, ponder away, please.
I'd say I'm
Don't
also
ponder.
entering. Yeah, I think I'm also in ponder mode right now.
All
I
right,
don't
I'll
think
step
I
up to
could-
the plate to answer my own question then.
I was just going to say, Jimmy, I don't think I could do. I'm the biggest Jimmy defender on the planet. Unfortunately, I think my Jimmy optimism got a little bit too high pre-playoffs. I was smoking that Jimmy Butler pack. He was not as – I shouldn't even had Cade, I think, above Jimmy. I think Jimmy's like top 30 now, but I don't think he's as high as – I think I had him like 16 or 17, something ridiculous.
I don't think you had him that high. I think you had him like 19. He was in your top 20.
I had him really high. So Jimmy is still in my top 30. I would really like to put Paolo up that high. Paolo's balled out in the playoffs the both times we've seen him play. Like, it's imminent. Paolo's going to be better than J-Dub, I think, eventually. Like, I only think it's a matter of time. I'm so confident in Paolo being a top 15 to top 10 kind of player with his frame and his skill. Paolo's a beast, but I still think right now I would take Dub in terms of impact. And then Damn, Carson. Shout out, dude. These are some great names. These guys are
Thanks,
all
man.
really
I
close in
invented
this
them.
range. And then I think Siakam's the first guy that I would have behind Dub. So I would marginally prefer Dub. So I would go, I think Siakam, Paolo, Jimmy in that order behind him. But I'd take Dub to all those guys.
Yeah, I think, after, again, the ponder, I think I
Yeah.
would also, I'd lean Dub as well. I know, I mean, I'm sure y'all have seen the incredibly intense Thunder Magic Twitter war over Jimmy, or not Jimmy, Paolo, J-Dub, and Chet, because obviously all in the same draft class. And
Yeah.
for some reason, there is a large subsection of Magic fans that are like, I hate J-Dub because he was in slight competition. I mean, it wasn't close in the end. Paolo won Rookie of the Year convincingly. But it's weird, like, there are still people who, like, don't like J-Dub because there was a Rookie of the Year competition, which feels insane to me to even harbor any type of feelings over Rookie of the Year. But
Yeah.
there's like that whole debate between some Thunder Magic fans with Dub and Paolo and Chet, like that whole group. I think I would take Dub right now. I'm also so big on Paolo. I know there are some people who are kind of out on him or not as high, but I just think with a guy of that type of size and skill, like you said, Logan, it's hard for me to see Paolo not becoming a star. And I'm really excited to see also in general what he can do with a better context, like the shooting. The amount of games I watched the Magic last season, I'm like, please just get a 3-point shooter. And then they did nothing at the deadline. They're like, nah, Paolo, figure it out. Like, we're just going to throw you in the deep end and let you drown out there. I'm excited to see him now with a shooter in Desmond Bane. Hopefully they add more. Hopefully Franz Wagner's 3-point shot returns from wherever the hell it went after his first season or two. And then he's got more room to operate. And then obviously I think there needs to be, changes to the shot diet a little bit. He gets a little bit too happy with like that mid-range jumper. It doesn't bully people when he's this like huge LeBron type of build. So yeah, I think Paolo is going to I think next season might be his big ascension. Also, being able to stay healthy, dealt with the injury this season. But I think, I lean Dub right now. Jimmy, I think with the age and just, again, I think I'm also down on him a little bit after the way that the season ended. So I put Jimmy also below Dub. And Siakam, he was so damn good in that series. There's almost a part of me that's like, I want to give him the nod, but I think I also lean Dub slightly. Yeah.
Yeah, Siakam really is playing the best basketball of his life because he is such an effective, refined, all-around offensive weapon with the mismatch attacking, with the elite transition scoring. He had his best season as a jump shooter, and then he can run inverted pick and roll for you. He can handle, and he's really a solid passer. And then this is some of the best defense he's played in his career, if not the best in this playoff run. He was so impressive there. So that's a real conversation. I'm going to go with J-Dub as well because I do think that he is still reaching a different level defensively. Siakam is very good there, but J-Dub is like probably top 10 in the world defensively. I do think he's more impactful as a playmaker versus Jimmy. I think it's really interesting because they are both like in their own ways those do-it-all wings. I just think with the age being a factor, J-Dub is now more impactful defensively. He is the more imposing athletic force. Significantly, he's the much better three-point shooter, which I do think can hold Jimmy back a bit in these playoff contexts. And he can just assert himself with volume more consistently. Like, we can talk about J-Dub's inconsistency, and it's a factor. Jimmy, when it comes to scoring volume, is kind of as inconsistent as they come when you're talking about, like, these top 30 kind of players. You know that he's not going to go all out in terms of asserting himself there every night. So I'll give J-Dub the edge there, but I do love Jimmy. I think Jimmy is still such a winning player, and I think he's going to have a great season. He was banged up to end the year, so I don't really hold that against him so much. And then versus Paolo, I basically agree with you guys. I think the ceiling for Paolo is higher just because so rare to see a guy who is 6'10", 250, that athletic, that skilled, absolute freight train downhill, gets to the line whenever he wants to, when he commits to getting downhill, with that sort of like passing upside. Just a lot of things that have to still be refined and tapped into. He was in the worst offensive situation of any playoff team this past year. Like what the Magic had around him and Franz was a disgrace, but still, I do hold him responsible for a lot of the shot selection stuff because a fair bit of that is on the situation and a fair bit of that is on him. And like right now, just if I'm trying to win a title, I would rather have J-Dub because he is so refined and so impactful in the winning aspects of the game in certain ways where Paolo right now is still like that uber talented young guy who's trying to figure things out as a number one. Right now, I would just have the guy who I view as more of a championship number two, and I would have him over Chet. Logan, you mentioned that earlier. I'm a huge Chet truther. I just think the offensive gap in these playoffs was so significant that I think that J-Dub has to be above him.
Yeah, I'm also on, at this point, Dub is the second guy on the team. I mean, I think that's clear over the course of the run. I do agree. I know y'all have said it before. Chet is the team's best or most important defensive player. I think that's pretty clear. You saw in Game 7 the rim protection there. And I am expecting a huge jump from Chet offensively next season. I think people don't really account for the hip injury and what that means to come back from that midseason. And prior to his injury, let me see. I already got the stats right from More Glaze. I'm so good at this.
The first 9 games, he was going insane.
He was going insane, yeah. So first 9 games, he was dropping 18.2 on 52, 40, 78 splits, blocking 2.9 shots a night while playing 28.9 minutes, I believe it was. So he's playing out of his mind in those first 9 games before he ends up getting hurt in that game against the Warriors, breaking his hip, missing a few months. Classic playing Carson's favorite team and seeing players get injured. The Golden State Warriors dynasty, dark magic continues.
My fault. My fault.
Hey, it's your fault. Did you do it?
I accidentally.
No,
I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. I forgive you then. As long as it's an accident, that's okay.
Thanks,
yeah, of course, man. I love you. I got you. But
I love
Chet,
you. Wow. You finally said it. I love you too, Cone. Feels good to say it out loud, doesn't it?
Well, I said I love you to Logan before the podcast, and he just shook his head and said, "I can't believe this is happening," and then left for like 15 minutes, and then came back and wouldn't say it back, and he said it was too soon and that we don't know each other like that.
And I came back with a cup of beans.
Yeah, he's a tough nut to crack. That love.
I mean, when are we having the like company mandated bean break for him because he can't stop talking about him?
I know it's coming up, Logan. You'll get your beans soon. But yeah,
Logan, what happened to your finger?
I couldn't be higher on Chet. I think Chet's going to be better than J-Dub. Like I say that with confidence. I think Chet is probably still going to be a top 10 player. That's my take with him. I think a lot of this offensive stuff can get ironed out with more reps and just with putting together full healthy off seasons and seasons. Like you said, Cone, he was so impressive, so aggressive as a driver, so assertive as a scorer over those first 9 games, and then never looked quite the same after the injury. Offensively, couldn't put together an extended stretch like that. But yeah, I mean, there's stuff he's got to improve with the shooting mechanics. The handle still has to get a little better for it to be really functional and effective in a playoff environment. I'd like to see the processing speed and some of the passing get a little better. I always thought that was a really intriguing aspect with Chet as a prospect, like underratedly, him being a good passing big. And then you look up in the playoffs and the guy's averaging like 1 assist a game flat. So I think there's a little more to tap into there. Lots more to tap into overall with him. But right now, J-Dub is better. Cone, what do you think was the most underrated part of the Thunder's improvement from last year, going from a team that got bounced in the second round to NBA champions?
Real quick, Logan, you're not dodging that question. What happened to your finger?
Like you, I tanked my draft stock with this injury.
Okay.
I was playing basketball. I was trying
Logan,
to strip.
the basketball. We're going with the basketball story. Perfect.
Okay.
I was just going to say maybe you don't share, but this is good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great cover-up. Don't worry. Continue.
Yeah.
I was trying to strip a dude on a drive when he was going up with a layup.
Okay, sorry.
And
on the drive. Yep.
Wait.
Yep,
I thought you switched back. I was confused because I thought you went from...
I got nervous.
I've heard some rumors. I got some DMs, some reports.
This is the official story.
I actually didn't realize I had broken it when it happened. I guess because I was like so hopped up on like adrenaline and stuff from balling.
Adrenaline.
Of course. Yeah.
It was adrenaline.
Yeah.
Well, then they throw the ball back to me. He made the layup, unfortunately. They throw the ball up to me at top of the key to check it up. And I give the ball back to the guy to check ball. And I glance down at my finger, and it's like going the opposite direction from where it's supposed to go. And I said, I got to go, guys.
Because then remember your eyes popped out of your head and you fainted.
And I said, oh, God. And then, and then I fainted.
You felt like this in the air and then floated down like this, like you were
exactly. And little doves were swirling above your head. Yeah.
Yeah,
we've all been there.
And then the monkeys came out with the stretcher, and then I fell through on the stretcher because it was broke. Yeah. Classic.
Right.
And then the piano fell on your head, and your teeth became the keys. Oh man, it's all happened to us in the basketball court.
And I came out with my oversized mallet, and I banged him over the head.
Yeah.
And then Roadrunner dropped the anvil on me.
I hate when he does that.
Crazy series of events.
Yeah,
That's the
not
craziest
that
thing I've
crazy.
seen since y'all kissed at the BDG and Combine.
Hey,
Yeah,
that didn't
well,
happen. That didn't happen.
I mean,
That was a private moment, Cone. That was a private moment.
Yeah, sorry,
Cone
my fault,
ducking
man.
the truth.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just had to check in on the finger reports because I heard some stories. I heard something
Right.
about
That's
you
good
and
journalism.
yeah, The Rock.
Don't go
I
there.
think.
Let's
Okay,
not
my
go
fault. My
there.
fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's the NDA. Sorry, I know I signed it. I didn't read
you.
it. My fault. Thunder. Yeah, biggest changes to winning a title. I mean, I think obviously the additions were huge. Caruso was unbelievable. So steady all throughout the playoffs. I mean, the 3-point shooting was still kind of an issue for us in the playoffs, and I think that addressing in the offseason still wouldn't mind if we had like a Cam Johnson or someone that's a reliable outside shooter, because we've got some good shooters, but not many guys who kind of go up and down. It's more inconsistent. Like great shooters on some nights, other nights it's like we need to hit a three. Guys, can someone please do that? Obviously, being the Pacers in that game 4, hitting only 3 threes still feels like a miracle to this day. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we had a little bit more shooting, but just in general, I think the growth of Dub as that second option was a huge improvement. I think last year, if with this version of Dub, we would have been able to probably knock off Dallas. I do think also just Caruso taking in kind of those minutes, as well as Hartenstein from Giddey, who was just not really a factor at all in that second round series against the Mavericks. I think Shai also grew as a playmaker quite a bit over the course of this. That's one of my big things. Presti said in the post-season interview last year that one of the things that stood out to him about watching us play Dallas was the gap in playmaking for them. And I do still think there is room for us to get better. We talked about another on-ball initiator. Maybe it's like Topic. Maybe we add somebody. It's continued growth from like Case and Wallace, and Shai and Dub get better. Not Carson, you said Chet. I agree. Continuing to improve in that regard. But I just think overall the team, like Shai's playmaking, we saw in that game 7. He had one of the better playmaking games of his life. In that game 4, when Dub was going off, he also had double-digit assists. Like some big games in that sphere, where last year it felt like the big impact, like he could make a big playmaking impact at times, but it was much more just like, hey, Shai's going to give you a ton of buckets. Now it's like Shai was able to set up us for a majority of those threes, it felt like, when we were actually able to hit them. And then I do just think having the overall like better roster, I mean, it feels like, very trivial to say, like, obviously, but I think Caruso as that game-breaking defender, really that was kind of the thing for us last year. It was like a little bit of both. We were a really good defensive team, a really good offensive team, but this year it was like the historic defense and really leaning into that physicality, that chaotic ball pressure, flying around, getting steals, getting in transition to make it easier for this offense that doesn't always have the most juice in the half court beyond like Shai and Dub at times. So being able to get those transition opportunities was huge. And I think a lot of that was, again, the additions. And I also think, like, in terms of the playmaking, Hartenstein coming into the fold with his passing to cutters, the amount of times this season where passing to Dub on a cut, dribble handoff doesn't work, or someone runs around and then Dub cuts backdoor and, gets that little back shovel type of pass to Dub on the cut. So to answer your question, when you said the biggest thing, the answer is everything, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just kind of glazed us for a few minutes. So.
Oh, great take.
I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I want to start with Caruso and Hardenstein. I mean, I thought those were the two biggest, guys that they added in here. And just like the veteran steadiness that they brought to the table, but specifically like their skill sets. Caruso doesn't fear the moment. The guy shoots it confidently anytime he gets it. He brings some supplementary playmaking value, but he also brings elite point of attack defense and versatility. And then Hardenstein, the Thunder were a bottom 5 team in terms of rebound rate last season. That was a big red flag. And so they addressed some major concerns with those two guys. And then you mentioned SGA's playmaking, which I thought was massive in this playoff run. But the thing that is the most underrated to me about this team is kind of interrelated with the addition of the veterans, and that's just the Thunder's overall resilience and composure. Carson talked about this a lot throughout the playoff run, but it's like every big moment, every big game, every big spot, when the Thunder had their backs up against the wall, they answered the call. If it was against Denver, if it was against Indiana in Game 7, and obviously the circumstances of that suck, the fact that Indiana lost Halliburton in that game, but it's like every big moment OKC answered in a resounding way, and in a way that you just believed in them. And I think that is interrelated with some of the additions that they made, but also just growth from the young guys. And you just trusted this team, I felt like, in a different way in this playoff run. They were more composed, and again, they always answered the call. It always felt like OKC was going to come through and handle business, and they did. And I still think there's a lot of ways this team can get better, which is ridiculous to say about a team that won 68 games in the regular season and was this dominant. Yeah. I mean, Carson, what was the stat? The best net rating in a playoff run? What was the net rating stat?
Yeah, they had a plus 8.6 net rating, so that tied last year's Celtics for the best by a champ since the 2018 Warriors in the playoffs. Yeah, after they had a top 2 net rating ever in the regular season.
That's good, according to my stat people.
Yeah, well, your stat guys are good. You don't have our little L's, but whoever you got crunching numbers over there is pretty good.
Yeah, it's just a talking dog.
I would love to have one of those. Well, Logan, you grew up with a talking horse. Tell them about Mr. Ed.
Have you heard about this, Cone?
Mr. Ed? The talking horse?
I love this program. Oh,
I think I love this, yeah. I've never heard about Talking Ed, the Mr. I just talk.
You need your morning coffee, my friend.
My draft stock is plummeting. I'm a loser. I suck.
That was minus 1,000 aura for sure.
Oh my god, I just gambled it all on the talking horse, Mr. Ed, and I lost it all.
It was the upside though was so massive. If you had just nailed that line, you might be back in the first round.
No,
that's all right, man.
They're saying they're going to execute me at halftime of the NBA draft now.
The Thunder have 18,000 picks. They'll take you with one of them.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they draft me instead of me getting executed. That feels like a big swing, but my agent just called and said that.
Well, that's the way this life goes, my friends. It's a make or miss industry. What do I think was the most underrated part of the Thunder's improvement? Great question. Like you both, I have multiple things written down. I do think that, like, Caruso alone is just such a massive difference, and I think that everybody knows it at this point. Like, I thought that he was clearly their 4th best player. I thought that it was a home run when they made the trade to get him for Josh Giddey, who I thought was an active negative for them in the playoffs last year, just being incapable of filling that role, being so ineffective as an off-ball player, so bad and inconsistent as a shooter, and being a guy who defenses could entirely roam off of. Meanwhile, like, he is obviously your weak point defensively, just really was not a guy who could play for them in the postseason, or shouldn't have been playing, even though he started for most of that run. And then you bring in, like, the ultimate opposite of that, where he's not a young guy who will have these flashes of offensive production in the regular season that people talk themselves into. Like, Caruso obviously missed some time in the regular season, basically never started, and so you didn't see his full impact until you get to the playoff environment, and that's where he thrives, and that's where he becomes a completely game-changing player, and that's where his experience and confidence, like you said, Logan, like, this is a guy who I thought was one of probably, like, the more average shooters for them going into the playoffs, and then all of a sudden he is their best three-point shooter basically throughout that run, knocking down 41% of his threes and taking them consistently, confidently off the catch. And then defensively, he's guarding Triple J, he's guarding Julius Randle, he's guarding Nikola Jokic, he's giving all of these guys hell in their unique ways while he is racking up steals on steals and making such game-swinging defensive plays. And then offensively, his maturity as a playmaker, like, that's exactly the kind of guy that you go out and get if you're trying to win a championship. And Giddey is the kind of guy who you move off of when you're trying to win a championship. That's exactly what OKC did. Props to Sam Presti for doing that. I also think we touched on this a little bit, but OKC's ability to win the non-Shai minutes. Like, they had a plus 7.8 net rating in the playoffs with him off the court. That is so impressive when you consider that early in the year, for like the first 30 games or something, they had like a 104 offensive rating when J-Dub was on the court with Shai off. Like, they could not remotely put together good offense in those minutes, win those minutes convincingly. That's what they did in this playoff run, and that's big. We also talked a little bit about this, but J-Dub just playing so downhill is such a big difference because he was so much better in this year's playoff run than last year. And last year, he shot better than 38% from deep in the playoffs. This year, he shot 30%. To be significantly more effective while having a much worse three-point shooting playoff run as a wing, that's incredibly difficult to achieve, and he did it because he was just so much more effective inside the arc, and he more than doubled his free throw attempts, which to me is all a product of him just getting into the paint, getting to the rim significantly more. That's so valuable. That's how you win in the playoffs. Like three-point shooting, there's going to be variance. If you can dominate the paint, if you can set the tone physically, you're going to be more consistent. That's what J-Dub was able to do much better in this run. And then one very little thing, Chet's rebounding improvement, I think, is pretty significant. He went from a guy who per 36 minutes in the playoffs last year was grabbing 7.5 boards to a guy who this year in the playoffs per 36 was averaging 10.5 boards. I thought that he was excellent with some opportunistic crashes on the offensive glass, and I think that's really where you see his impact felt more on the boards because, Logan, you talk about them addressing their bad rebounding last year by going out and getting Hartenstein. Absolutely, that helped. I mean, Hartenstein is by far their best rebounder. But if you just look at all of the minutes that Chet was on the floor last year to the minutes this year that Chet was on the floor without Hartenstein, so the minutes that Chet is playing at the 5, their offensive rebound rate went up by like 5% from 21 to 26 in the playoffs. That's a significant improvement. Their defensive rebounding rate went up. So that's part of why these small ball looks with Chet at the 5 were so lethal and were their best groups throughout the playoffs. Yes, obviously they're maximizing their speed and their defensive ceiling in those groups, and offensively they can play 5 out and all this great stuff. But also, pivotally, they were able to end possessions more effectively, and they were able to generate more possessions on the offensive glass than they had been the year before. And I give a lot of credit to Chet for that. One more question before we look to the future, and we talk about a couple things that are not directly related to the Thunder, although we'll still incorporate the Thunder. Okay. I know, I'm sorry, Cone. I'm sorry. Okay. But we'll still talk about the Thunder. Don't worry, you can glaze.
Okay, cool.
What will you remember most about this championship Thunder team?
I think it's got to be the defense. Obviously, Shai's season is also, like, individually, Shai's season for me is going to, like, this is my favorite season ever from a player. Obviously, you know, my favorite player, my favorite team winning a championship, duh. Anybody could have guessed that. But to just see the way this team just destroyed everybody on the defensive end, with Chet missing a majority of the season too. Like, the defensive rating relative to everybody else, and in the playoffs, you know, kind of still some of the first minutes we're seeing from the double big, and Chet still trying to figure it out a little bit. Like, there still feels like so much room for this team to grow on that end for Kaysen to become a better defender. I think he's a huge piece in making this go even further. And as Dub and Chet become better offensive players, you know, Shai was good defensively this season. He's a good defender, but there are still those moments where there's more so lapses. But you see in like game 5 where Dub is able to be so good offensively. Shai has his best defensive game of the playoffs, and it's just game-breaking on that end. And I think as the offensive production continues to build for like Dub and Chet and the rest of those guys, Shai's able to put more into that defensive end, so he can get better in that regard. I mean, Chet, already one of the best defenders in the world. I still think there's so much room for him to grow too. Like, and the defense can get better from here still, which is insane, but I mean, just the turnovers, the whole season keeping track of, like, you know, their turnovers versus opponent turnovers and winning that battle almost every single night, it felt like. And just everybody, I remember going to the playoffs, I saw some people say, I don't think the Thunder are going to win because, you know, what are they going to do when it gets physical? I'm like, have you watched this team? And then the prevailing narrative was the Thunder are too physical. Like, they got to stop. They got to call fouls on them. And just being able to root for a defense that creates that much havoc, that creates that much conversation, like, that was, I think, a majority of the season was people, or majority of the playoff run is people being like, the Thunder are getting away with this, getting away with that, like being this incredibly physical defensive team. And to see that growth from last year, where I think one of the issues was a lack of physicality at times. You talked about, you know, Dub getting downhill and guys being aggressive and fighting into that contact. I feel like they really embraced that this season. Also embraced it with the rebounding, whether it was Chet or, you know, Lou Dort. I felt like got so many big offensive rebounds throughout this run, especially in the finals there in Game 7. I remember a couple of them, at least one towards the end when the Pacers were making that little bit of a run. He grabs one, and Kaysen Wallace is this crazy offensive rebounder for a guard too. I swear he gets in there and like skies above someone way bigger than him for at least one a game. The team really just kind of embraced that physicality and that identity as this defensive juggernaut, and I think that's going to go down in history.
Defensive juggernaut is right, Cone. I mean, I think you hit it on the head, dude. They've got the best turnover differential in a single playoff run in NBA history. The second best team is the 2019 Raptors, and it's not particularly close. I think the Thunder finish at plus 131. turnover differential in a playoff run, and the Raptors finished with plus 77. So they nearly double the second best team in that category, and it's just them wreaking havoc consistently. The Thunder forced 20 turnovers twice against Memphis, twice against Denver, twice against Minnesota, and 3 times against Indiana. I mean, that's just unprecedented levels of defensive dominance in the modern NBA. And I completely agree with what you said about them getting better, Cone. It's like they already have phenomenal defensive versatility with what they can do with the double big lineup, which I thought was uber effective in the matchups against Minnesota and Denver, and vital when they needed it. But they can also go fast, like you mentioned with Chet at the 5 against a team like Indiana. It's that versatility. It's the personnel that they have top to bottom, and they're not done getting better, man. I would feel bad about glazing the Thunder this hard, but it's like they are such a damn good basketball team that I actually don't. But, I mean, this is just a historically dominant defense, one of the best defensive playoff runs we've ever seen.
Yeah, and they're your NBA champions, and they're your 68-win NBA champions. You know, whenever people accuse me of glazing the Thunder, I'm like, brother, what have I said that hasn't come true? You know, I said that Shai was having a top 3 guard season this century, and I think that he cemented that every step of the way. I said this is one of the best defenses we've ever seen, and they cemented that every step of the way. I said the Thunder are going to win the title, and the Thunder won the title. So call it glaze if you want. I just call it reporting the facts, man. I'm not a Thunder fan. I've got no agenda here. I just know a great team when I see it. Sorry, Cone. Go Dubs, baby. Go Dubs.
Yeah, whatever you and your million championships, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Well, guess what? The 2025 championship is fake because Hallie got hurt. But it's okay because the 2017 and 2018 and 2015 championships are all also fake because 2017 and 2018 were unethical. And 2015, obviously, Kyrie and Kevin Love got hurt.
Yeah, that's fair.
2022 is fake because Ja got hurt. So, unfortunately, there have been no real rings in league history.
It's been a long time since we've seen a real ring. You know,
2011, the only one. Yeah.
No, that one's fake too.
Oh.
I just don't think it happened. I'm actually a 2011 ring denier. I just don't think that year
it does seem really unlikely that LeBron would just suck like that. That he would 8 point. I don't know.
Can we make it more realistic? JJ Barea, like, what are we talking about here? I actually think I'm actually part of this like subsection of people who think that the world didn't end in 2012, it started in 2012, and everything else is made up before that.
That's a good take. You know, you should talk with Tyler Hero. I think you guys would actually.
Really he convinced me to do my own research, and I really appreciate him for that because, you know, there's all these scientists and people who go really into their fields and have done like decades of research and work, but I think me doing a Google search and figuring something out myself is a more effective way for me to figure out how to think about stuff.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think you should keep doing it, and I think you should take it even further. For me, what am I going to remember about this OKC team? It is the defense, and I'll just recite a couple of crazy stats that I have mentioned before for most of them, but they're just ridiculous. OKC held their opponents 11.1 points below their typical offensive rating in these playoffs. That's the biggest difference that we've seen from an NBA champion since the 04 Pistons, and I do believe the Thunder are the best defense we've seen since the 04 Pistons. In their pivotal closeout games, OKC held Denver to 93 points and forced 23 turnovers. They held Minnesota to 94 points and forced 21 turnovers, and they held Indiana to 91 points and forced 23 turnovers. Just incredible stuff. Most steals per game that we've seen in a playoff run that went at least 10 games since the 1970s. Like, every pivotal moment, they just reached their ceiling defensively as one of the top 5 defenses we've ever seen, in my opinion. It's the fastest defense I've ever seen with Chet at the 5. They have the best collective hands I've ever seen. They have the best defensive depth I've ever seen. They're the best at forcing turnovers I've ever seen. And interestingly, they kind of continue this trend that we've seen throughout the 2020s of teams being able to win the title without good three-point shooting in their playoff run. Even though OKC was a really good three-point shooting team in the regular season, they were not in the playoffs. They were out of 16 playoff teams, 11th in threes made, 13th in three-point percentage, but they dominate with their physicality, with the all-time defense, with their paint scoring, and that's a trend that we've seen. You look at the 2020 Lakers, they were 11th in threes made, 12th in three-point percentage out of 16 playoff teams, but they were able to win largely because of a dominant defense and a dominant paint offense with LeBron and AD downhill over and over and over again. 21 Bucks had a terrible shooting postseason. They won with the downhill force of Giannis and them being the best defense in the field. The 23 Nuggets are a little bit different because they were an offense-first team, but they were still able to win in spite of being a low-volume three-point shooting team, where they won multiple playoff games in that run where they made like 4 3-pointers or fewer. That's not something that you see often, although the Thunder also did it in the NBA Finals nonetheless. I just think that's a really interesting through line. We think about this as the three-point era, and yet you look at a lot of these recent champs, and they're actually the teams that have been able to win in spite of not having particularly good three-point shooting, and the Thunder are perhaps the most impressive that we've seen in that mold. Let's look to the future, Cone, because it's draft day today. As you mentioned, we're all fingers crossed hoping that you get picked, but if not, what do you want OKC to do with their 2 first-round picks at 15 and 24? And overall, what are the biggest keys for them to get even better next year?
Well, I know 2 guys who I've talked with very recently that I'd love to see the Thunder draft, and their names are Carson Breber and my brother Ryan. Those 2.
Great picks. I love them.
I would have went with Logan, but I need to hear the horse story before the end of this podcast before I can truly evaluate his draft stock. And then the finger thing and the piano and the keys and the anvil. I can't handle someone that's not ready for those types of big time moments.
Carson's got great NBA size, man. I'm telling you, he's one hell of a prospect.
No, for real. Like, I saw y'all at the combine. I'm like, oh my God, Carson's huge.
With an official 29-inch vertical? Come on. I don't know what my standing reach is, but
I was going to say, with that height, you could probably dunk standing up. You don't go really. You might go tippy toes and just like hang on the rim.
I think, who is it who has the record for standing reach? Mark Williams? Not anymore. Not if they let me in the combine.
Yeah, that's why they won't let you in.
Actually, no. It's probably got to be Wemby who has the standing reach record, right? 7'3.5" with an 8-foot wingspan. Or if they had done it, it would be Bol.
You've got a 12-foot one, right?
I would guess Manute Bol probably.
Oh yeah, I said Bol. I meant Manute, but I don't think that they measured it back then. But yeah, he would have the record.
We gotta get the elves. We gotta get the elves on that.
Yeah, we will.
What was your question again?
Thunder draft. What would you like to see them do?
Thunder draft. I think the obvious thing is just shooting. Like, just give me some type of shooter if we draft somebody in that range. I wish I could say I'm more prepared for the draft, but I'm like, my brain is soup on that. It's the first time I feel like I'm so out of my depth. Cedric Howard is a name that I know that I like. Like, he's somebody that I think would be pretty interesting for this team. So that's one guy that's on my board right now. But I can't help but shake this feeling that the pick might get traded, that we might try and make some type of move. Because we don't have roster spots. Like, everyone that was on the team this year is under contract for next season. So we've got to make a trade if we're going to draft and sign somebody, or just in general, like, a move has to be made, whether it's tonight or, we draft someone before we officially sign them, something down the line. I wouldn't be shocked if I could see a world where we make like I don't know if I want to say Cam Johnson because his name's just always been thrown around, but it seems like Brooklyn's on a quest to get every first-round pick, and I feel like there's something there with them trying to trade up for somebody. Like, they have all these first-round picks, and maybe they try and get 15 from OKC, and there's like this 3-teamer where we get Cam, and I think the money works perfectly if it's like Isaiah Joe and Ousmane Dieng. Like, that money works perfectly for Cam Johnson. I don't know. Like, I would like to either draft somebody who's ready to be somewhat of a contributor as a shooter right now, in my opinion. Or, you could go someone with some on-ball juice, but I still just think trying to see if you can get that out of Topic next season is a better route to go than drafting again for kind of that same mold. Give me a shooter. I wouldn't be shocked either if we go with a big of some kind. Like, I know I've heard some people have brought up a little bit of like Danny Wolf is someone that I think Presti looked at one point. And heard from mysterious sources that he's someone that I get that they could potentially consider in the draft. It just feels like, someone, again, can shoot. I feel like eventually we're going to have the conversation about where does Hartenstein go after this contract with the Thunder, because, he's getting paid right now, but we're going to have to pay guys, and it feels like a natural eventually, we move on from him. Chet is the full-time 5 again, and we have to find someone else to kind of step up in that backup role, or someone else to play alongside Chet in that front court. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's a big of some kind. I've seen some people also bring up Colin Murray-Boyles, who doesn't fit the shooting at all. But, if we just want to continue to go on this all-time, like, just wreaking havoc defensively kind of setup, and Chip England believes he can conquer another project of turning Colin Murray-Boyles into a shooter, then, sure, go for it.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what you said. I do think Hardenstein is probably going to be gone after this season, but I'm not too worried about it for the meantime. But yeah, I think they should draft win-now contributors or package the picks for a rotation piece. I've seen the Thunder are reportedly trying to trade into the top 10 of the draft.
Yeah,
I
I've
don't
seen
know if
that
that's
too.
going to happen, but if they've got their eyes on somebody, Presti has all the ammo in the world to go and make that happen. But I think they need to improve reliable three-point shooting without compromising their defense. That's where a wing like a Cam Johnson comes into effect, and then some bench ball handling or a depth big man, like you mentioned, for the future after Hardenstein. But what I've always said about OKC, what Carson and I said about them last offseason, and I still feel this way about this season, they have the assets to, and they should be aggressive, I think. If that is dealing a Jang, an A.J. Mitchell, a Dylan Jones, they've got these guys, and they've got 11 first-round picks through 2030. That's including the 2 first-round picks this year. Those guys I mentioned aren't even in their rotation. But if they could upgrade to get one of those wings we're talking about, I would be okay with giving up an Isaiah Joe or even an Aaron Wiggins, even though I really do like Wiggins. Let me know what you guys think about these other names that aren't Cam Johnson. Carson and I have talked about Cam and Trey Murphy a lot. I thought of 2 other guys. Let me know if you like the fit and if you think they're attainable. The first guy to me is Denny Avdia.
Not attainable.
Yeah, I think with Portland now getting Drew Holiday, it feels like they're very in on trying to be competitive next season, and I just think what he brings to the table for them, especially offensively, that I still like that defense. I think is going to be really good, but offensively, I still think there's a lot that they need to add to make that team somewhat viable if they want to be somewhat competitive in the West next season. With a lot of teams rising, I think Denny's just too important to that.
And he's on the best contract in basketball. Guy's going to be making under $12 million in 2 years. Maybe if you gave them like the Godfather offer, just the mother load, which OKC could do, but I think the asking price for him would be significantly higher than a Cam Johnson. Like Cam, I think you can get for 2 firsts in Joe and Jang, and the money works, and I would do that if I'm OKC. I think Denny, it's probably like more than 3 firsts. I don't know. 3 firsts or more at least.
Okay, the other wing that I wrote down here, I think maybe you could buy low. Also, this franchise is idiotic, so they might do it. Keegan Murray.
Ooh. Kind of interesting. If I'm the Kings,
The Kings
probably
do make
wouldn't move
bozo
off
moves. They do make bozo moves.
yeah, I mean, I do like Keegan. I would prefer Cam just because I think like priority number 1 for me is getting that truly elite shooter. However, Keegan still being a very good shooter and being a very good defender, I do think he'd be a nice little fit. The thing is, they'd have to pay him sooner. With Cam, you get another year of him on that $20 million deal, which I think is probably more intriguing. And he is the better player right now, and specifically offensively, which is the bigger priority.
Yeah, I think
But those
with
aren't
the
bad
King,
fits.
I like the fit of both guys on the team. I think the only issue with the Kings is the only player we have from those Bulls teams to offer them is Alex Caruso, and I don't want to give him up, and I know
Right.
that's their goal is to recreate that Bulls team. So
Yeah.
we might have to trade for someone and then bring him. Like maybe we trade for Patrick Williams, or maybe it's a 3-teamer. They get Patrick Williams, we get Keegan Murray, and then the Bulls
Oh.
get. Is there anybody there that can make them like slightly more competitive and help them not commit to a rebuild that they could hold on to and lose all their trade value from the Kings? Is there anyone like that?
I mean, could you get Vooch? Send him over there?
Ooh, oh yeah. So you send Vooch and Patrick Williams to the Sacramento Kings, and we get Keegan Murray. Well,
not bad.
there's something here. We'll workshop it. But
Could
I
you
feel
get
like,
Tony Bradley involved somehow? Can you pry him away and send him over?
man, I don't know if the Pacers want to make a trade this soon after the finals. I think they're still recovering, but I'm imagining a team that has Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Tony Bradley. Have we considered Lonzo Ball in this equation?
Let's get him there. Why not?
Let's get him over there, man.
I can almost imagine it. If I like really think in my head really hard, I can almost see it.
I can picture that team winning like a lot of games, and then a franchise being like, we're going to chase that magic for the next 3 years. I could see something like that happening. Yeah, probably something along those lines. Yeah, Cam's my favorite fit for the Thunder. I just continue to think about his fit there. I do also really like Trey Murphy, but I think the asking price, I feel like the Pelicans are going to ask for everything possible for Trey, and I just don't know if that's going to end up working out for us.
Last thing I'll say, though, you did shout out the one guy that is kind of the NerdSesh folk hero of this draft. We both are really high on Cedric Coward and his all-around game and his immediate impact. So, I mean, if the Thunder could swing getting a guy like that, I mean, I think he's in the rotation immediately, and I think he's got some real upside. So I would love if they could land a guy like Coward in the draft, too.
Yeah,
that would
interesting
just be
that there's a Coward and a Zero Fears in the draft at the same time. It feels like it's a big moment for scaredy cats across the world.
That's a great point, Cone. This is big representation for guys like you, little sad, pathetic, little weak boys.
Yeah, I know, loser, soft boys. Yeah,
exactly.
Which is why I thought my draft stock might be higher, but they just keep saying like you're 25 years old, you're way past your prime, and you really don't bring anything to the table, which feels like a little bit.
You're a plug and play kind of guy, man. You've got the experience.
Yeah, I've been trying to sell him.
Guy.
Yeah, I've been trying to sell him on the whole Chris Duarte thing, and I don't think that's really helping me out too much. I think they're saying, hey, he was out of the league really quick, and that pick kind of sucked, which feels like
fall off fast.
Yeah, I feel like I should. Remember that one like month stretch where it's like, this happens every year where a player who's older gets picked and plays really good for like a month, and they're like, here it is, like this is why you can't bet on against the age thing, and then they're like, it's, So I would like my month in the sun if they drafted me.
Was good. R.I.P. Chris Duarte, man. You're a team first guy, Cone. That would be my sales pitch. Having been on a team with you before for some 7-on-7 flag football, you went down, and I believe your leg had to be amputated, if I'm correct. But regardless, I think
both legs had to be amputated.
Both legs. The knee went down. You were screaming in pain, crying profusely, of course. But you stayed there on the sideline. You waited for the amputation. You were positive throughout, and when I scored my touchdown, which of course they've already written songs and books and movies about,
you guys shared a beautiful kiss in the end zone. Oh,
who was the first guy there to kiss me right on the mouth? No, Logan, that's correct. It was Cone. It was Cone, and that's a moment I'll never forget and I'll cherish forever.
I was just saying I'll never forget. Like I said, "Ow, my leg really hurts." They just cut it off, and you gave me a kiss on my boo boo. I really appreciate that too.
It was disgusting. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I did what had to be done. A lot of exposed flesh. And that's what you do for your boys. That's what you do for your friends in this life. And that's what
everyone's encountered a lot of exposed flesh that you got to kiss before,
Hello, Logan. Camden knows a little something about that. Come on, Logan. Do your signature dance move. Do your signature dance move.
Hey, look at him go. Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, I love this guy. We got to get him his bean break. He earned it after that one, man.
I know. He's so close. So close, Logan. Anyways, my AirPod just almost fell out. I think at 15 and 24, if they do stand in draft, you guys identified the needs. I mean, to me, it would be number one, a shooter. I want to see them go out there and be aggressive and trade for a guy who can immediately take them up another level. Like if they get Cam Johnson, I just don't think there's any world in which anybody's beating the Thunder next year, truly, as long as they stay healthy. Because already, I think J-Dub, Chet will get better. I think Shai will even improve on the margins. The roster's still young. Kaysen can get better. And then he would so immediately be the perfect fit for the biggest inconsistency with this team. I would do that. I also do think the Thunder are in an interesting place where they're so great at drafting and they have so many picks that if they can just keep cycling through good players on rookie contracts, it's an unconventional formula for a contender for sure. But if anybody can pull it off, I could see it being the Thunder, where you're not having to pay anybody outside of the big three big money once those guys are on their extensions. That being said, right now, before you've had to pay big extensions to Chet, I would just go out there and I would trade for a Cam Johnson. But if they don't, if they stand and draft at 15 or 24 or both, Cedric Coward would be my number one target. I think he's such a great 3-and-D prospect. I don't know if he'll fall that far. My other guy, who we mocked to him when we did this the other day, would be Neat Clifford, who I think brings that aspect of the bench ball handling and can be a real creator for you there and can get into the paint, can facilitate, but then also can be effective playing off the ball, really effective shooter off the catch, and then is a bigger guard who can be a really plus rebounder for you. He's a great rebounding guard, and then also has solid defensive tools, just kind of the do-it-all guard wing type who I think the Thunder really like and who I do think would fit well, and he's 23 and a half, so he's ready to contribute now. That would be my philosophy if I'm the Thunder. If I am going to sit here and draft, I'm drafting dudes who can contribute to a champion. I'm not drafting to develop any long-term projects. No more Usman Jangs. That's done. We're getting guys who can play. Yes, I'm sorry to say it, Cone. I'm sorry to say it.
You can't throw shade at the Zhang gang like that.
Well, I just did. I just did. Because
All
guess
right.
what, buddy? How many meaningful minutes did he play? 0.
How many times have you seen your address on the timeline? It's about to be 1.
Well, that is totally fair, and I applaud you. That's just good doxing. That's just good
Hey,
doxing.
hey, great. Well played, man. Well played. I
No,
love to
seriously,
go to
that was
war.
a great.
Love to go to those wars with you, man.
No, seriously, great battle. At 24, I could see them maybe just going for like the pure shooter kind of mold, like maybe a Liam McNeely. Not my favorite. I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent and productive as a shooter, especially when contested and especially off the dribble. He was just flat out bad, but definitely a very gifted shooting prospect and not going to be a plus defender whatsoever, going to be very mediocre on that side of the ball, but you could get an elite shooter with some size there. Maybe. I'm not going to say he's going to be an elite shooter, but I do think that there's a path for him to be that. And then the depth big is definitely interesting too, because I do think that that's going to be a need for them in this post-Hartenstein window. Regardless, biggest keys for next year, adding that reliable elite shooter, ideally a forward, and adding a little bit more bench ball handling. Maybe it's Topic. I do think it's a lot to ask of him, just stepping into that role immediately. But I do like Topic, and I am big picture an optimist with him. Let's talk about the biggest story in the NBA outside of the Thunder winning the title that you mentioned earlier, Cone. Kevin Durant traded to the Houston Rockets. Does that make Houston the biggest threat to the Thunder next year? In the West, let's start there.
Yeah, I think it puts them into the conversation for sure, but I think there needs to be a little bit more, in my opinion. I still worry a little bit about some of their overall offensive juice because obviously he helps. And I mean, I think it's going to come down to really what does Amon do in terms of a leap next season. I think there's obviously one there, but what kind of jump does that look like? Fred VanVleet, not like super, super old, but getting up there in age. And there are those wild inconsistencies with him as a shooter. So like, what does it look like for him? How does Reed Shepherd come into the fold? Because I still think he could be really good for them. And that's, an offensive creator, a shooter type of archetype that I think could be helpful for them. Obviously, the defense with Tari and Amon and Jabari Smith, like also what does he do? Is he a more reliable shooter? Does he show growth offensively? I think I might still lean like a Denver just because of Nikola Jokic and the threat that he provides and the upside there with Jamal Murray, of course, what he's able to do in the playoffs. And Aaron Gordon is still one of the most terrifying players, again, I've ever seen in my life. I think there's like almost this tier where it's like, I think Houston is in that tier now with the addition of Kevin Durant. I think Denver is there, and I need to see what Minnesota can do. Like who do they retain? What changes do they make? I think they really need to add a playmaker, someone else to play point guard outside of Mike Conley because he is now basically a shell of himself. And if they're able to add that type of playmaking player, then maybe them. But then I just also think matchup wise, the Thunder are just horrific for Julius Randle. I just think it's a terrifying or terrible matchup for him. So I'd probably say maybe Denver and Houston are the top two that come to mind for me at this point. And I'm interested to see what Golden State can do in a full season with Jimmy Butler there. Obviously, after Jimmy was added, Steph really elevated his game, and it was a lot easier for him to play. There's a lot of young talent, like what his pods do. I mean, what happens with Jonathan Kuminga? It feels like probably gone, but where does he possibly go? I just saw as we were doing this report that the Heat are interested, so love to see them throwing themselves in another rumor for someone they're not going to get. They're really good at that. So yeah, I don't really know. It feels like there's this big conglomerate of teams that over the course of this summer could make that push to be number 2. I think right now Houston is probably 2B maybe for me at this point.
I think you identified the teams in this next tier for me. It's Houston, Denver, and Minnesota. I'll say this with a caveat. It's the 25th of June, so we have yet to really get deep into the offseason, and teams haven't made a bunch of moves. Denver is that team that if they deal Michael Porter Jr. and get that 3-and-D wing, I could see leapfrogging Houston just because of my confidence in the Jokic-Murray two-man game and that offense.
Sorry, they're actually going to trade Jokic. Did you see
that? What the hell is wrong with that GM, man?
Crazy intrusive thoughts.
They need to duct tape him and put him on the Hannibal Lecter chair, bro. Just shut up, man. What are you talking about, bro?
Yeah, well, the problem is he owns the team. So.
Trade Jokic should never be two words that ever come out of your mouth.
But they won't trade MPJ. They won't trade
Yeah.
MPJ because he went to Missouri and they have ties to Missouri.
For
Even though
what?
he
Like
played
4
9
months?
games at
I was
Missouri.
going to say.
Exactly. I don't think that Denver's going to make a trade of any significance, which is a huge bummer because I would love to see them, and I think that they absolutely could take that leap to being the second team in the West. It seems like they're going to stand pat.
And
Pat Connaughton's coming in?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that's a move of significance.
Well, they like his baseball background, and they said that white boy can jump. They're huge fans of the movie White Men Can't
They're going to
Jump,
bring him
Woody
with a
Harrelson.
baseball bat onto the court and smack people.
Oh, why not? Give it a shot. So that's what the Thunder do for 48 minutes every game.
Yeah, that's what they do. Shai shoots free throws for 48 minutes, and the Thunder just beat people with crowbars over and over again.
Yeah, they come in with crowbars, and they beat them, and they threaten their families. And then
Yeah,
Scott Foster pours gold on them for it.
Yeah, Scott Foster. It's amazing how he's able to referee, like, grab the whistle to blow it when he's carrying the 2 pots of honey that he pours on the Thunder over the course of the
Yeah,
games.
exactly. And when he's already got Shai's you-know-what in his mouth.
hello. Okay. For that reason, the Rockets are going to be my number 2 team concretely out west. And, Con, I think you're right that I guess I have some marginal concerns about the offense, but, like, KD makes up for so many of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
If he's healthy. Like, Carson was one of KD's biggest advocates this regular season, and I think collectively, I think you saw with the trade market and with people's just general perception of KD across the league that people are just way too low on the guy. And if he can stay healthy, that's my primary concern with KD at this stage in his career. The Rockets are the number 2. They've got the elite defense. They've got the personnel and the depth down the roster. They're going to be an elite defense, an elite rebounding team, and KD's still a damn good offensive player. Most importantly, though, they didn't give up anything of significant value. They gave up Jalen Green, who is a non-starter for me. They gave up Dylan Brooks, good riddance, sayonara. I don't want that guy on my team. And they gave up the 10th pick, which to a team that has this much young talent, and they still kept all of Phoenix's future first, which is huge. Like, yeah, the Rockets are there for me. So, I mean, the only concerns are how great can the offense be, which KD makes up for a lot of that. I still like the fact that they held on to Fred VanVleet, who can do a little bit of that supplemental playmaking. And then, like you said, Cone, just how great does Amen Thompson get next year? How much does he improve as a three-point shooter? How much does he improve as a mid-range and intermediate shot maker, which we already saw improvement from? And, how great of a lead playmaker and ball handler can he be? But the Rockets are 2 for me, and I think probably the scariest team. The one team that you didn't mention that they're not in this first pack to me with Houston, Denver, and Minnesota. I think next for me isn't Golden State. I think it's probably Dallas, actually. But I think Dallas and Golden State are in that same second tier to me. But Houston's number 2 right now. And we'll have to see, like we said, how the rest of the offseason shakes out. But I really love this move for Houston. I think it's a home run. I think they got incredible value for a guy like KD.
Yeah, the Suns are kind of silly geese for not getting any of their picks back. You think they'd want those back?
They're super silly.
Matt Ishbia, man.
I mean, to be fair, well, they got this year's pick back, and I don't know if they could have gotten more. Like, I think the KD market was just way too dry, and I think that that's their fault for waiting way too long to trade him when they should have done it after last year, and I wouldn't want Jalen Green back if I were them. But in terms of the draft capital, it is obviously underwhelming, but not totally surprising, in my opinion. I do think right now, and like you said, Logan, there's still an offseason to go, but the Rockets are in position to be the biggest threat to the Thunder in the West right now. The Nuggets are definitely the team that I look at next. It's them in Minnesota, as you guys have been saying. And there is definitely the argument that, like, Denver just having that elite half-court offense and having Jokic be such an incredible force there maybe outweighs the two-way edge that you get from the Rockets, especially when we saw in these playoffs, like, the Nuggets can still lock in and defend at a totally solid level when they need to. That being said, I think that Houston is going to be one of the most suffocating defenses in basketball. They already were. I mean, we saw their ability to just bludgeon people, be so physical. They're so long. They're so athletic. They just have some destructive defensive players. And now they add Kevin Durant into the mix. Yeah, they lose Dylan Brooks, but they have Jabari Smith. They have Tariq, and they have awesome defensive wings who can step in there. And KD, man, this guy is almost 7 foot. He's long as hell. He's still a very impactful secondary rim protector and a plus defender. So he just adds even more size and length and range to that defense. Offensively, yeah, there is a burden. This offense does still lack like that true elite playmaker, and I think a lot of their ceiling there does hinge on what can Amen become, and Amen's still not going to be the best version of himself next year. Like, he is just going to continue to develop. I'm a huge believer in his, but he's not just going to suddenly hit his ceiling, but I do think he'll improve. And bottom line, like, you think about how close the Rockets were to winning a playoff series, and that's only one series to be fair, but while they were the worst half-court offense outside of Orlando in the playoffs by far, like an abominable half-court offense. And yet they are so dominant on the offensive glass. They are so great defensively. They're so athletic. They're so physical that they're right there. Now you add a guy who is like the ultimate plug-and-play, hyper-efficient, great on-ball, great off-ball scorer, by so far their best offensive player, kind of guy who can cut through that rock fight environment they're going to be in because they'll dictate things defensively. And then, yeah, around him it might be a struggle offensively, but he's Kevin Durant. Like, he'll get them to be an above-average offense. They actually statistically were an above-average offense in the regular season, but he'll make their half-court offense much better, and then defensively they'll be dominant. I think I like that punch the most. I think they have the best chance to really give the Thunder offense trouble with their elite defense. Like, Denver did a nice job. I do think that OKC kind of figured that matchup out as it went along, though, on the offensive side for them. And Denver just doesn't have the same level of personnel defensively, obviously. Minnesota, really good defensive team. I think that OKC is a lot more comfortable in that matchup than they could be against even some teams that were less talented defensively, like Indiana, Denver. I think both those teams posed more issues with their defenses for OKC than Minnesota did. So yeah, I think it's an absolute home run, and I think that it puts Houston into an entirely different tier. They go from really good regular season team that we all know is basically fake when it comes to their potential for a legitimate playoff run to now a team that I think absolutely can be in the Western Conference Finals this next year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that growth and development from, like, I mean, Amen is obviously the key to everything. If he takes the leap that it feels like he can, then yeah. I do agree. I think they're the clear threat, assuming he does take that jump. I feel like it's just so hard to say because I feel like there are so many West teams that should do something, but I don't know if they're going to. You talked about Denver. Minnesota feels like they should do something, but I don't really know what the options are out there because they need to. You know, right now they're just trying to bring back the players that made them good in the first place this past year with Julius, who had a good run overall, even though it was a lot worse against the Thunder, and Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker's out there. I do still feel like the Lakers could figure something out, but they need a big man. They need defense of any kind. It just feels like there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. I have no idea what they do. I'd like to see Golden State add a big. You know, who's out there right now on that type of market? I don't know. It's just, I feel like there's so many routes, which is something that's also cool about us being, you know, me being a Thunder fan. It feels like there's so many routes for us to get better still and to improve and really, you know, shut the door on a lot of the conversations about who knocks us off in the West and make it like, hey, it's you know, going to be a crazy toss-up if anybody has a chance of knocking us off if we had some shooting, you know, just really, you know, hammer down on that while maintaining the defense the level that it is. But it's cool to see that, you know, like the Rockets are making that type of push. They've been trying to make a push for a little while. And I would love to see more movement out West. I just don't know what teams are actually going to be willing to do and who is actually going to be available to be those types of difference makers, especially with how hard it is to trade, it feels like sometimes for a lot of those teams, like with the Aprons.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, like the NBA is the wildest offseason, I think, in sports with just the player migration and the chaos. And it is rare just that OKC has this opportunity to kind of stiff arm everybody else and extend their lead on competition. It's rare that, one, a champion improves after a title run, but it's really rare that a team this dominant has an opportunity to get even better. You win 68 games when your third best player misses, you know, 50 games. It's ridiculous. And final thing on Houston, though, Cone, you were talking about this. I mean, there's an opportunity for a lot of young guys potentially maybe to get better for Houston outside of Amen. Like, I still feel like Sengun has an opportunity to get better. I'm not super optimistic, but, like, if he develops touch and more of a perimeter shot, you know, Shepard and Cam Whitmore are kind of complete, like, you know, who knows what they're going to turn into. But it could be really rapid for Houston with all the young talent that they have. It could happen in the blink of an eye, but It's the offseason, man. It's the arms race. Like we always talk about, Carson. It's time to put your chips into the middle of the table and make some big moves. Scared money don't make no money.
Yeah, I do really look for next year at Amen and Şengün as obviously being the most talented young players for them and the most important for this offense. Taking that leap that KD is going to absolutely help them take. But with Şengün, it's really about a lot of the finishing efficiency and some of the touch shot making in the paint and him adding a 3-point shot. He can basically get to his spots in a playoff environment. We've seen that with his strength, with his post footwork and ability there, but he has to be more efficient as that shot maker, and it would be nice if he could add some of that jump shooting. And then with the men, we also saw him in that playoff series have stretches where he can just will his way to the rim. But as you said, Logan, can he add some more of that over-the-top shot making, both on and off ball? Can he become more consistently a guy you entrust with primary ball handling and playmaking responsibilities? Those guys are going to be the biggest swing factor, along with KD obviously being added. But he's going to help their offense so much in every way, and I do really, really love this for them. We've already said this. It's too soon to be doing this sort of stuff, but we're doing it all the same. It's June 25th. We just had the finals. What's your guys' prediction for next year's finals matchup?
I mean, you know me. I'm going to say the Thunder. Or I think the Thunder are going to get back right now. Yeah, it's Glaze. It's one of my favorite things was I made my prediction video for the playoffs, and I got so many comments that were like, I can't watch this guy anymore. He has the Thunder in the finals because he's a Thunder fan. I'm like, no, because they won 68 games. They're the best in the NBA. But yeah, I think the Thunder get back there. I mean, right now, I do trust that Presti will make some type of move, even if it's mostly maintaining the roster and nothing really happens going to next season. I still think unless something major happens, the Thunder are the clear best team in the Western Conference. So I'm going to say that we're there. And then out east, I mean, I think right now I have to go Cleveland. They dealt with injuries in the playoffs, and there were, still some question marks. But just thinking about no Indiana, no Boston, I think I trust the Cavs a little bit more than the Knicks at this moment, especially having no idea who the Knicks head coach even is. I think I have to go with the Cavs at the moment. I've even struggled to think who my Eastern Conference Finals is going to be. Never mind who's going to come out of there. But the fact that they were so good and it felt like they had a real chance to not only make the finals but win it all this year, I think I just got to bank on them for right now. So I'll say Cavs Thunder. And if you want my championship prediction, I'm going to say the Thunder because I'm going to keep the Glaze going.
Logan?
Yeah, I think I agree. There's not really anybody else in the East that I like convincingly more. To me, after that, it is the Knicks. Then I would say Orlando because I just think Orlando has the potential. If Paolo took a leap, if Franz, his three-point shot came back, and their defense with the addition of Bane, like you mentioned earlier in the show, Cone, I think the team needs, or Orlando needs more shooting down the roster. I still think they need to continue dipping into that well. And then I get into Detroit talks, which is where I kind of draw the line with actual legitimacy. It's crazy though, man. I mean, with the Sixers perpetually dealing with drama and nonsense, with Indiana dealing with the Hallie injury, with the Celtics with their overhauled roster and Tatum and Brown going under the knife. The East does feel a little bit more open, but it feels like Cleveland kind of has to be the front runner with their abundance of talent. I don't know if I brought this up on the show yet. I kind of couldn't believe that Phoenix didn't accept the Garland offer for KD.
If that's real, I'm stunned that they didn't accept that. That feels. I
Let
can
me revise my statement about them being like, oh, okay, yeah, KD's value had tanked. If they could have gotten Darius Garland and they didn't, they should be fired into the sun.
Is there some tie for Jalen Green to Michigan State?
No,
over Kevin Durant? There has to be something there. Jace Richardson probably going number 10 to the Phoenix Suns. It seems like, knowing that connection there.
It's a good point, man.
How many guards what are they going to trot out? Devin Booker at the 5, man? What are they cooking in there?
Try it. Yeah, get radical. Play a little small ball. Yeah, I'm putting my foot down right now. Man, I know that there's still an offseason left. I'm pretty confident we're going to see Thunder Cavs in the finals next year. Thunder, I think it's kind of a given. Why? The Cavs, I do think, are going to be head and shoulders above everybody else in the East. And I know that there's this notion that somehow every single Donovan Mitchell-led team until the end of time is going to be fraudulent, which to me really makes no sense because you're talking about like entirely different iterations of teams. If you're trying to go back to a Utah team, like I don't really see the correlation there. Also comparing this year's Cavs team to any previous ones, they were so much better. And I'm not going to excuse them losing to the Pacers. I thought the Pacers were just better. I also think you have to acknowledge that Darius Garland couldn't move when he did play in that series because his toe was fucked up so bad. Then Mitchell got hurt, and Evan Mobley was playing banged up and had to miss a game entirely with injury. Like, I don't know how you overlook that and just end up concluding, oh, the Cavs are frauds. I think that they're coming off of a 64-win season, and they have every opportunity to just get better. I think that Mobley cemented himself as a top 20 player this year and improved in so many different ways as a three-point shooter, becoming more comfortable as a ball handler, initiating offense, adding a little bit of strength, like in so many ways, just became a more dynamic offensive player while he's the defensive player of the year. I think he can just continue to get better. Like he's a 24-year-old freakishly gifted big. That's what these guys do. They just add wrinkles and improve on the margins year over year. I'm still a Garland believer. I get the defensive issues, but I think he is so great offensively, and what happened in the playoffs with him, so much of it is injury related. I think that they have an insanely gifted offensive backcourt. They have insane shooting. They have really good depth. They have an awesome offensive identity. They're really well coached, and then they have the aspect of having two really good bigs. Now, Jared Allen, I think, has to be better going forward in the playoffs, absolutely. But they also can go with Mobley at the 5 for extended stretches, and they're really good there, especially now that they have DeAndre Hunter, so they can play both him and Max Strus on the wings. Like, if they want to turn to that as a starting look at some point and move Jared Allen to the bench, that's fine. And then Jared Allen is going to give you really productive bench minutes at the very least. Like, I just think their offense is going to be maybe the best in basketball next year. Their defense will probably be fringe top 10. And in this East, I like that. I think that they have the best combination of star power and depth by far in the conference. And like, I know a lot of people really like the Knicks. The Cavs dominated the Knicks this past year. And I get it. Playoffs are different, right? The Celtics also dominated the Knicks. But I do think that trying to put together a serious defense with Brunson and Cat on the floor against an offense this potent, specifically Cat, there's just nowhere to hide him. He just gets absolutely fried in that matchup, and the Cavs get whatever they want offensively, and I'd pick them confidently. I like Orlando. I like what Atlanta's doing. I don't think anybody's on the Cavs level in the East, and I don't think anybody's on the Thunder's level in the West.
Yeah, I just think the pendulum swung a little bit too far back on the Cavs after the playoffs. Like, the Pacers were the better team in that series for sure, but there were those real injuries. Like the Garland thing is big with his toe. And I hope now we can, I know, Carson, I saw a clip of you talk about this, but with the faking injuries thing, like, if you're healthy, you can play. Halliburton clearly was never right. I really hope nobody ever plays on a calf injury again, because the amount of guys that we're now seeing deal with that calf injury to Achilles transition, it really sucks. Again, shout out to Halliburton for the run that he went on in the Pacers, because it really felt like, if that injury doesn't happen, they were one of my clear favorites. It's like them and Cleveland to come out of the East next season. But I do still think the Cavs are the cream of the crop in the Eastern Conference right now. I know, again, they lost that series, but I do think there's also so much room for Mobley to grow. I was so high on Mobley coming out of the draft. I'm even higher on him now. Just the growth that he showed this season, I still think there's so much more to even unlock there. It was their first season with Kenny Atkinson at the helm, and they were already that good as an offense. They could still make, they're still not completely out of assets or anything, so they can make moves. They can shift things around if they feel like they need a little bit more defensively. They've got the versatility of a Mobley at a 5 or Jared Allen at the 5, and then great wing players and two of the best guards in basketball, Garland and Mitchell. And I'm also still a big Darius Garland believer. Yeah, I just can't believe, I don't think they offered Garland for KD. I just can't wrap my head around that, because I think the Suns would have accepted it. But they still have the ability to make a big swing if they feel like they need to. Maybe it is around the deadline, someone becomes available that fits them a little bit better, and it is Mobley at the 5 full time and Jared Allen's gone. I don't know, but Cleveland just feels like they're the best team in the East.
Yeah, I mean, they could stand pat, and they'd be the best team in the East.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree. I think people definitely are down on them a little bit. I think it's really rare that a team ever comes together for the first time and gets the job done, gets to the NBA Finals. And obviously this wasn't their first run together, but they have yet to have a run where everyone's healthy. 2 years ago, it's Mitchell and Mobley going up against Boston, and they looked promising. It's like everything has yet to fall into place for Cleveland. And I'm not saying a run's ever going to be perfect, but it really does feel like this is the year for Cleveland to do it. Boston's out of the picture completely. Like, they're not even relevant. Indiana is now out of the picture. Those are the two top dogs. So it's like, who steps up? The team with 4 all-star talents and really good depth. I'm not going to say it feels obvious, but it's like if Garland is healthy, if Mitchell is healthy, if Mobley and Allen are healthy, Kenny Atkinson took this offense up they took such a leap with him offensively. They do feel like the no-brainer pick. And so I'm praying to the basketball gods for health across the association next season. And I think if Cleveland stays healthy, I think they are the front runner.
I agree. Like you said, Logan, it feels obvious, and yet any time that you praise the Cavs anywhere, there's so much pushback. Weirdly, really hated on teams. Slept on, really hated on teams.
People did the same thing with OKC after last season, man. And then
nobody likes when someone leapfrogs the competition. Like,
so weird.
When a team jumps to the front of the line, everybody's like, they've got to be frauds. Like, there's no way they pulled this off.
And then they win the title, and then everybody loves them.
Yeah.
Well, or they just go to the asterisk title argument. They don't love them. They say, "Oh, we all knew this was coming," but also it's fake anyways.
I'll give someone credit. I tweet out, so I changed my profile picture in the Snapback studio. We got the Larry O'Brien for some trivia, so I changed my profile picture to a picture of me holding it because I'm aura farming. And immediately someone commented and like, don't worry, I did the asterisk for you. Just posted the same picture, but with the asterisk on the trophy. Kind of hilarious how quickly they turned that around. Like, the Thunder were still celebrating the title, and someone got in the lab for that immediately. I'll give them credit for that. But
celebrating what? It was handed to them.
Yeah, it's true. I forgot. It was cool of Scott Foster putting that Adam Silver costume to hand the Thunder their trophy. It was cool that he went ahead and did that. And he was actually every single ref too. Like, he was in a costume of every other referee.
Yeah, he's what's known as a mimic or a shapeshifter. He can just inhabit other people's bodies and wear their skin. And
oh, Logan, you do that sometimes, right? It's like a hobby for you.
I just be eating beans.
My fault. I forgot there's no time. There's no time for you to do your shape-shifting mimicry when you're eating beans. My fault, man. My fault.
Yeah, Logan, go eat your beans. Cone, thanks for coming on, man. Blast, as always. Actually, it's our first time having you on the show. We've done pods with you before as guests, and we've made some memories together out on the football field. And
of course,
saw you out in New York. But great to have you on the show to talk about your beloved Oklahoma City Thunder. Everybody go follow Cone, 3Cone, Twitter, YouTube, OnlyFans. Anything else you want to plug?
The Conley fans is still in the process. It's not quite there yet, but the 3Cone team is on it. Once we get some of those elves, like, I think it will help out a little bit. The production, we gotta make some graphics, things like that, and then that picture that you're gonna use as the thumbnail. Can you just send that to me? That'll be the first post. Ooh, or joint venture actually on that front. We'll talk business after the podcast, but
passive income.
Real quick, Logan, tell me the talking horse story.
Have you never heard of this guy?
No, I don't know. I don't know what
Nobody's
you're
ever
talking
heard
about.
of Mr. Ed, bro. If they were born after 1972.
All right, look.
Well, it doesn't help that you're 86.
I'll walk you through the big three. All right, first came Mr. Ed, the talking horse. What a revelation! I mean, who thinks of that? How preposterous! It's a talking horse.
You have to be a sick and twisted bastard to dream up something like that.
What a novel idea, am I right?
Logan, I just want to say, I looked this up. It's his first episode in 1961. What the hell? Like, are you
And then get this. And then there's this guy. His name's Fred Sanford. He's got this son. Okay. And he's always about to have this heart attack. I'm coming to see you. It's like he's about to die,
Yeah.
And do they have any animals that can talk or no?
Not in this one.
It's just I'm coming to see you.
And then there's this other guy. It's a little kid, and he's dirty, and he's rotten, and he's spoiled, and his name's Dennis, and he's just an absolute menace,
Bro, that's crazy. How do they think of that? I'm on board now, man.
Have you guys not actually heard of Mr. Ed?
No, I don't know what the hell is happening.
It's actually really funny, Logan.
A horse can't talk, Logan.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous.
It's science fiction.
I just don't like sci-fi.
You're making it up.
Like sci-fi. I don't know. I just don't like living in a fantasy land. I live in the real world, Logan, where men smoke cigarettes and drink brandy and whiskey and go to work in the coal mines for 14 hours a day. We don't go sing songs with talking horses.
There were these dogs that won the Iditarod, too, and then they won a basketball championship. I don't know if you guys have seen
It's not
those
possible.
Either.
They're not coordinated
it
enough.
could
They're
never
not
be
dexterous
done.
enough.
They don't have thumbs.
They can't dribble the ball.
They can talk, too, and they can dunk.
Can they do a tween hezzy?
Yes.
Doubtful.
I don't think there's
54 from tray ball, shooting hang pulls. Doubtful.
I don't think so.
I don't buy it at all.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Look, I think you're living in some kind of sick, twisted
Guys, I
fantasy.
got to go on my bean break, all right?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair
we
enough.
gotta
Thank
get
you,
on
Cohen,
those.
for giving us so much of your time. Congratulations. You are an
Thank
NBA
you.
champion, as are the Oklahoma
am.
City Thunder. Everybody, go check out Cone if you want more of our stuff right here on our YouTube channel. You can listen to the pod across all audio platforms. You can follow us on social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. And you can catch us live for the NBA draft tonight over on the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel. We're going to be with our boy Jason Timp over there, so that'll be a ton of fun. One last shout out to Cone, the GOAT. And with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
I'm cone high.
And this was NerdSesh.